is leading the Namaskar, welcome to World Today. The Office of the UN Human Rights Council took up the situation in Afghanistan. The Taliban takeover, treatment of women and forced imposition of practices that contravene human rights. We continue to follow the developments in Afghanistan with an eagle eye. Let's begin with the headlines. Indian evacuation efforts continue. 78 more people, including 25 Indian nationals, evacuated from Kabul. 44 Afghan Sikhs reach India from Kabul via Dushanbe in Tajikistan. 3 copies of the Holy Scripture, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, also come on the flight received by the Union Minister Hardeep Puri. Union Human Rights Council holds a special session on Afghanistan. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights says that the Commission is receiving harrowing reports of human rights violations from Afghanistan, asks Taliban to honor commitments, says the red line for Commission would be treatment of women and girls by the regime in Kabul. During the special session on Afghanistan in the UNHRC, independent representatives from Afghanistan report massive human rights violations already taking place in Afghanistan, call it an uncertain and dire situation where millions of people fear for their lives amid reports of door-to-door searches. India says rights of minorities must be respected in Afghanistan and it should be ensured that Afghan land is not used by terrorists. India calls on the international community to extend full support to the people of Afghanistan in leading a peaceful and dignified life. Countries around the world continue to evacuate their citizens from Afghanistan as evacuee numbers increase. Evacuation deadline of 31st August looks unrealistic. Many countries urge the US to extend the deadline. Taliban says 31st August is a red line that should not be crossed. Full approval of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine is expected to trigger a new wave of vaccine mandates. The FDA approval of the vaccine is likely to instill additional confidence in US citizens to get vaccinated. Level 4 national lockdown in New Zealand is extended till midnight on August 27th. The lockdown in Auckland, the epicenter of the outbreak there, to have restrictions in place till at least the end of this month, 31st August. So let's begin with the big news. Continuing with its efforts to bring Indian nationals and Hindu and Sikh minority members from Afghanistan to India, the government has said that 78 more people, including 25 Indian nationals, have been evacuated from Kabul. The Union Ministers, Hardeep Singh Puri and V. Muralidharan, received 3 copies of Scripture, Guru Granth Sahib, and 44 Afghan Sikhs who reached India from Kabul via Dushanbe in Tajikistan on a special Air India flight. The MEA evacuees were flown in from Kabul on an Indian Air Force aircraft to Dushanbe. The Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri carried the holy book. He said that he is blessed to receive the Swarup of Sri Guru Granth Sahib, and the minister was present at the Delhi airport to welcome the evacuees from Dushanbe via a flight that had returned after rescuing Indian citizens from Afghanistan. Speaking about the evacuations, Hardeep Singh Puri thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for carrying out rescue operations. He also said that arrangements are being put in place to bring back the remaining Indian nationals.
I want to start by thanking the Honorable Prime Minister who has made it possible to carry out these rescue operations to bring our brethren who are in difficult circumstances there. Or arrangements are also being put in place for the remaining people. We are in constant touch with them, and I want to compliment the Ministry of External Affairs, my friend Jaishankar ji, Muralidharan ji, for having implemented this.
The Minister of State for External Affairs, V. Muralidharan, has said that the MEA has opened up a special Afghanistan cell to coordinate smooth evacuation. He said that stranded Indians can reach it through a WhatsApp, an email, or even the phone, and that the government will ensure their safe return.
Anyone who decides to come to India, Indian nationals, and in addition the Sikh brothers, they are all, we'll bring them to India.
And Manjinder Singh Sirsa, who's the chief of the Delhi Sikh Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee, has thanked the government for the efforts.
आज गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब महाराज जी के तीन पावन स्वरूप जो कि अफगानिस्तान काबल से वाया दशांडे यहाँ पहुंचे हैं, हम सभी दिल्ली से गुरुद्वारा मैनेजमेंट कमेटी के लोग गुरु साहब के पावन स्वरूपों को यहाँ पे रिसीव करने के लिए पहुंचे हैं। हमें इस बात की तसल्ली है कि हमारे भाई भी सुरक्षित पहुंचे और गुरु साहब के स्वरूप भी सुरक्षित पहुंचे, जिसके लिए मैं भारत सरकार का धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
And the Union Minister Hardeep Singh Puri today said that a total of 626 people, including 228 Indian citizens, have been evacuated from Afghanistan till now, adding that the number of Afghan Sikhs who have been evacuated is 77.
626 इसमें हमारे नागरिक जो है जिनको हमने इवैक्यूएट किया है वो 228 है। इसमें हमारा जो राजदूतावास था वहां पे जो काम कर रहे थे हमारे गवर्नमेंट के ऑफिशियल्स, उनकी संख्या मैं इसमें 228 में इंक्लूड नहीं कर रहा हूं। एंड द टोटल नंबर ऑफ अफगान सिख्स who have been evacuated are 77.
Well, addressing the media over the Afghanistan evacuation operation in New Delhi, the Union Minister said that that those who have come from Afghanistan, he thanked the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Mother India for providing comfort to the people in distress.
सेवादार आए साहब, हिम्मत सिंह जी, कुलराज जी, और वो उनसे सुबह बात, धर्मेंद्र जी सुबह उनसे बात कर रहा था, उन्होंने दिल से मोदी जी का धन्यवाद किया, भारत माता का किया, that we are able to provide sanctuary and comfort to people in times of distress, or Hindus and Sikhs in particular, all other communities also.
Further, Hardeep Singh Puri said that the Prime Minister has a special relationship with the Sikh community and has always been at the forefront of for the community.
हमें कभी भी कोई डाउट नहीं था, क्योंकि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने और उनका जो पर्सनल संबंध है, उनकी कमिटमेंट है सिख कम्युनिटी को, सिर्फ यहां नहीं, सिख्स वर्ल्ड वाइड। इस स्पेशल रिलेशनशिप के बारे में कुछ आपको बताना चाहता हूं। मोदी जी जब प्रधानमंत्री बने 2014 मई में, उस समय में कहा करता था अगर ये लहंगा खुलेगा तो मोदी जी की कमिटमेंट और उनकी डिसीजन मेकिंग के साथ होगा।
The minister also said that the Afghan evacuations should not be politicized, and he said that India will always support persecuted minorities.
इन चीजों पे राजनीतिक रोटियां नहीं सेकनी चाहिए। This sentiment is what is important. The situation which is evolving in our neighboring country and in the entire neighborhood. But you know, the kind of statements I see coming from parts of our political system in the last few days, या तो उनको समझ नहीं है यहाँ क्या हो रहा है हमारे नेबरहुड में, या समझ होने के बाद भी they are taking positions which I am frankly very disturbed about, and so should anybody else be.
And we are joined by Ambassador G. Parthasarathi, a well-known strategic affairs expert, former senior diplomat, and Major General retired Sanjay Meston, who had served as a defense attaché in Afghanistan and is now an expert on security affairs. Let me turn to you, Ambassador Parthasarathi. You know, the Sikh community in the 70s was about 200,000 people or more in Afghanistan, and now they have been reduced to about 700. And 77 have come already. Only about 70 families is what somebody had once said, one of the Sikhs who has returned. So what do you think, I mean, has been happening to them? We can't hear you, Ambassador Parthasarathi. You're maybe on mute. I can hear you. I can hear you now. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. You see, remember one thing about our Sikh community. They are extremely enterprising.
Yes.
And most of these people who have left will be in Canada or the United States or UK.
Okay.
Many also go to the Middle East. So I'm not surprised, because Afghanistan has historically from being a country of very small economic opportunity. And our Sikhs are too enterprising, to want that. They want a place which is growing, and they do much better.
Okay.
It's no. I think I have visited Afghanistan at least on 4 or 5 occasions. That sort of religious persecution does not take place, except in extraordinary times when there are tensions and so on.
Okay.
So I think I wouldn't attach that much importance to their leaving. Quite obviously, it's not the most comfortable place on earth, and they've moved on to better places and better surroundings. And many, I think, some have even found India a better place to come back to, and have come back. But that's their choice.
Right. Major General Meston, from your experiences in Afghanistan, would you say that, the minorities were safe to a large extent?
Firstly, I would like to endorse Ambassador Parthasarathi's remarks. He is very appropriately brought out, and I have myself interacted with the Sikh and the Hindi community there, and let me tell you, the feedback I got was very positive. In fact, they have made a good impact in the society over there. Even the Afghans had a good respect for them, and not only that, it is heartening to see that from these two major communities over there, we have MPs. One is Anarkali, and that too she being a lady.
Yeah.
So really their acceptance levels in Afghanistan are fairly high, and I also did not hear anything about persecution. Maybe one odd case may have been planned by the Pakistan ISI, but otherwise the people of Afghanistan, they love them.
But Ambassador Parthasarathi, then, the reason for people to come back at this time is obviously because of the Taliban takeover, but they don't see a future, as you said earlier, economically either, for themselves in Afghanistan. So it is a community that's going to dwindle further, and, the fact that the Guru Granth Sahib has also been returned, has come back with them, it's a sign that they may be closing shop there.
They will, but they have left behind monuments, and I think, as the general said, their services are appreciated wherever they go, and they are very. I was amazed. I was a 8-year-old kid during partition when I saw the Sikhs pouring in from Pakistan, and within 2 years, they had organized themselves. They settled down fast. So I think we have to bear this in mind. And frankly, the Taliban Mark II seems to be a much harsher creature than Taliban Mark I. Taliban Mark I was bad enough.
Yes, indeed.
And therefore, I think there was really nothing for them to stay there. And I think we should give it to our government that they said that they can come back, and I would hope that it will be expanded to include all categories of people of Indian origin.
Indeed. Major General Meston, would you think that the number of people who are going to come back out of Afghanistan is just going to continue to increase once Taliban declares itself and forms a government? So how do you, what do you see, what do you foresee as the circumstances that are evolving there?
Yeah, definitely, I totally agree that because of the panic which has set in,
yes,
more number of people would like to migrate to other countries, and people who have affiliation with India definitely would like to return to India till the time the situation stabilizes. And as the ambassador brought out, I totally agree that this version of Taliban 2 is, I think, going to be more, and not only that, this time we have the Haqqani. Yeah. And that is perhaps one of the reasons that even the government formation has not been able to take place. You are well aware that the Kandahari Pashtuns, yes, basically I would say the Taliban, yes, and of course which is always called them a Durrani group, and the other from Paktiya and Paktika. Okay. This is a group which is the Haqqani group, the Gilzai group, and even Ashmat Ghani is supporting them. Okay. So there is a big conflict of interest over here, and I've been given to understand from my contacts there that even every hour the situation within the discussion keeps changing, because Pakistan definitely would like to give an upper hand to Haqqani. So this is factor one. The factor two is that even what is happening in Panjshir, because I have myself been in that area, explored the terrain is extremely difficult, and both sides of the valley are huge mountains and they are barren mountains, so they provide very good observation, domination by fire and observation, and the entry route is again dominated by hillocks which have got very good outposts. So yes, therefore this again is going to be a major factor, because Taliban now is, or I would say ISI is under a confusion. Should they attack or should they fight there, or they have a reconciliatory approach? Okay. And Taliban, that is, they are trying, the Kandahari Taliban, to have a reconciliatory approach. Okay. They are sending people to Ahmad Masood. Yes. And therefore probably they will try to, make him accept, not surrender, because that would be an incorrect word, to, be part of the system. And I have really seen over there the Ahmad Shah Masood is an iconic figure. So the people of Afghanistan and even Taliban and Haqqani would not like to play around with his son in any manner. All right. Because if something happens, it's going to have a great impact on the formation of the government. So these two factors, indeed, the conflict of interest between the two communities or tribals, and the issues at Panjshir, yes, is again going to have a major impact in the formation of the so-called government.
We'll discuss this in greater detail, but let's take a few stories and then we'll come back to this discussion. Gentlemen, do stay with us. So, the United Nations Human Rights Council, it's held a special session today to address the serious human rights concerns and the situation in Afghanistan. Nazhat Shamin Khan, she's the president of the 15th cycle of the UN HRC. And she initiated the special session, mincing no words about the dire situation in Afghanistan regarding the human rights and the citizens there. Michelle Bachelet, who's the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said that the Commission is receiving harrowing reports of human rights violations from Afghanistan. She gave grim figures of those forced to flee and relocate due to fear of reprisals by the Taliban.
The harrowing humanitarian situation, aggravated by sustained drought, the COVID-19 pandemic, and significant shortfalls in enabling economic, social, and cultural rights, has further deepened with recent events. A month ago, SRSG Deborah Alliance indicated that 18 million of Afghans were facing a dire humanitarian situation. This was double the number in July 2020, amounting to one-half the people in the country, and it is set to increase. UNHCR has estimated that an additional 270,000 people have been forced to leave their homes and livelihoods since January 2021.
And Bachelet also said that the onus of keeping the promises made regarding upholding of human rights rests squarely with the Taliban leadership.
In statement over the recent weeks, the Taliban has pledged to respect and protect human rights. Taliban spokespeople have made specific commitment to respect women's right to work and girls' right to attend school within the Taliban's interpretation of Islamic law. They have also said they will respect the rights of members of ethnic and religious minorities and refrain from reprisals against those who have worked with the government or the international community. The onus is now fully on the Taliban to translate this commitment into reality. In seizing effective control of much of the country, they must ensure in those areas ongoing respect for the international human rights commitment made by the state, as well as ensuring ongoing and indeed heightened provision of essential public services without discrimination to all.
Well, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights further said that the red line for the Commission would be the treatment of women and girls by the regime in Kabul.
I strongly urge the Taliban to adopt norms of responsive governance and human rights and to work to re-establish social cohesion and reconciliation, including through respect for the rights of all who have suffered during the decades of conflict. A fundamental red line will be the Taliban's treatment of women and girls and respect for their rights to liberty, freedom of movement, education, self-expression and employment, guided by international human rights norms. In particular, ensuring access to quality secondary education for girls will be an essential indicator of commitment to human rights. Government must remain inclusive, with meaningful participation of women and representation of Afghanistan's diverse communities to help in beginning to build confidence and ensure a future in which all have an equal stake.
Bachelet also called for a dedicated mechanism to monitor the evolving situation in Afghanistan.
I urge this Council to take bold and vigorous action, commensurate with the gravity of this crisis, by establishing a dedicated mechanism to closely monitor the evolving human rights situation in Afghanistan, including in particular the Taliban's implementation of its promises with a focus on prevention. I further note that given the urgency of this situation, an update by my office at the coming September session may be necessary. I'm also willing to update the Council intersessionally on an urgent basis in the coming month.
Addressing the special session of the United Nations Human Rights Council on Afghanistan, the representative of India, Indramani Pandey, said that the rights of minorities must be respected in Afghanistan and it should be ensured that the Afghan land is not used by terrorists. He added that the international community must extend full support to the people of Afghanistan in leading a peaceful and dignified life.
Voices of Afghan women, the spaces of Afghan children, and the rights of minorities must be respected. Stability in Afghanistan is essential for peace and security in the region. We hope that the territory of Afghanistan is not allowed to be used by terrorist groups such as Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed. We, the international community, must extend full support to the people of Afghanistan in their desire for peace, stability and security, and enable all Afghans to live in peace and dignity. Thank you, Madam President.
Addressing the special session of the United Nations Human Rights Council on Afghanistan, the chairperson of the Afghanistan IHRC, Shahrazad Akbar, said that there is gross human rights violations in Afghanistan.
The least the special session can do is to illustrate through actions to Afghans that they will not look away, that the world is committed to at least a credible, strong, and well-resourced mechanism to document the abuses and act as a deterrent.
And she also said that the Afghan activists are facing atrocities of the Taliban. She said that the international community must understand the seriousness of the situation and take urgent actions.
Afghan activists on the ground, my colleagues on the ground, who face direct threats to their lives and the lives of their families, demand better. While they have everything to lose by putting this ask for a better mechanism forward. To be frank with you, you are failing them. But now, today, not next month, not next March, you have the chance to redeem yourselves. Please take it. Please ensure this session has a credible and strong outcome. Please do not leave this tomorrow or the next month. Many I speak to in Afghanistan already fear that they may not have a tomorrow. In our worst moments, we call on you to do better.
A senior Afghan diplomat from the deposed government called for accountability of the Taliban, describing an uncertain and dire situation where millions of people fear their lives amid reports of door-to-door searches.
The international community, in particular this council, call upon the Taliban and all parties to respect international human rights law and international humanitarian law and ensure the safety and security of all Afghans.
Now, addressing an emergency session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Ambassador Nasir Ahmed Andisha also called for the creation of broad-based government that includes all countries, ethnic groups and female representatives.
We call upon all states to keep their borders open, to facilitate the exit and provide access for all Afghans, for the ones who are most at risk and who wish to leave. Seeking asylum is a human right, and we urge you to welcome all those in need.
So let's turn to our guests once again. Ambassador Parthasarathy, so the people are crying out for help at the Human Rights Council, and well, I mean, the situation is who's to blame, what's to be done. People are waiting and watching while this situation is just getting worse in Afghanistan. And the world community continues to talk. I mean, there's a G7 meeting, there are all sorts of groups meeting, but you know, can anything really come out of it? So your microphone once again. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
You see, these things will have a marginal effect.
Okay.
On the essentials, but it is going to be a hard battle. Okay. One has known how the Taliban functions. They do not respect women or women's rights. Mm-hmm. They use leather belts to hit women. So I think this is going to be there. The important point, I think, which will have to be made, I can't see even the Chinese or the Russians being very happy with this. They are going to have, and on human rights issues, I think the pressure must grow and even injected into the Security Council when and should it be needed. The international pressure works. These people, their economy is broke.
Right.
And I do believe that the time has come for the international funding organizations to turn the screws off them. I think that will happen, but we should ensure that that happens, because ultimately the Chinese do not give hard cash.
Yes.
They build roads, bridges, and trap the recipient party in a debt, which is what has happened to Pakistan in Balochistan. So I think this is the thing that needs to be taken into account. And I don't think in the Security Council, while there may be differences, even China and Russia will be very careful in not getting into issues like the mistreatment of women, the lack of opportunities for women.
Right.
These are the issues which need to be focused on, because these guys, one has known, they are just something different, and they have to be dealt with differently. And one hopes that the meeting taking place between the President Biden and his European allies, these things come up front, because India will certainly join in. Okay. I think that the party which is going to have to face a certain amount of embarrassment are going to be the Pakistanis.
Indeed.
Because look, and the other thing which we had better watch out, the arms which the Pakistanis have seized, I mean, some of the most ultra-modern weapons, will find their way to jihadis acting against India and others.
Right. Major General Meston, you know, you are also one of those who gives talks on leadership, and I read one of your quotations, and it said that a leader during difficult times, you can play the blame game or do what is right, take the criticism and own an extreme ownership. Do you think the Americans should be taking, you know, the ownership for what's happened in Afghanistan?
Very relevant question. I think the Americans need to take the extreme ownership.
Yes.
I think somewhere down the line the Americans have gone wrong, because I had mentioned earlier in one of the channels that the US, when they had come to Afghanistan, their military strategy or aim was very, very precise to find, fix and finish Al-Qaeda. And I think they felt that probably they have achieved after elimination of bin Laden. That was in May 2011. And thereafter, if you recollect, then President Obama had visited Afghanistan in May 2012, and he had a meeting with President Karzai then, and they had signed a strategic partnership meeting. And that thereafter, you are aware that, you know, the transition to the political setup and to the you know, handing over the entire operations to the Afghan National Army was in two cards. So that was already happening, and the ANA, or rather the Americans or the NATO forces, had assumed the role of mentors. So they were supporting, they were not getting involved in direct operations. And one of the operations I recollect, where these people had fired on all the green zone, including Indian embassy that time. I recollect the entire clearance operation, in a 2-day clearance operation. It was done by the Afghan Special Forces.
Okay, so they have the capability, is what you're saying.
Yeah, they had the capability, and therefore then when Trump took over, and you are well aware that the Obama had announced the drawdown, and when President Trump took over, he had secret meetings since 2018 and then got Baradar released. So I think somewhere they had some vested interest that they did not even keep the then government of Afghanistan into the loop. They were just doing it directly, and therefore whatever larger game plan, I actually, this is my personal analysis, I felt that they would have used all so-called Taliban if everything would have gone off well, maybe against the Russian and the Chinese interest and the Iran, because that's a place where these three countries you can do anything.
Okay.
And of course Pakistan would have extracted their pound of flesh by diverting something to India.
Okay.
So anyway, everything perhaps was going as per the plan, but what actually has happened, this sudden collapse of the Afghan army has actually turned the whole tide, because this has now brought a lot of embarrassment, and the
okay, you know, fair enough. You did mention that they did have the capabilities. Ambassador Parthasarathy, what do you see about that now? Because the weapons you did mention are now with Pakistan. There is a big concern as to what happened to these soldiers and whether they must be still around somewhere. Are they willing to, you know, regroup and fight under Ahmad Massoud, for instance, if there is going to be a fight?
I think they will certainly be involved. Many of them may not. But the resistance will grow.
Okay.
And you should have faith in that. Don't be in a hurry to rush and make up with them. But I would suggest it is important to keep a line of communications with them open, and let's see what they have on offer. Because for them also they are going to be isolated. And in an ultimate analysis, no Pashtun likes a Punjabi Pakistani. They are stuck with them, and they will go along with them. But I think there are also problems you must realize on the border between Pakistan and Afghanistan on the Durand line. You had not too many years ago a major operation against the Pashtuns there by the Pakistan military, and you have a Tehreek-e-Taliban in Pakistan, which is made up of those Pashtuns who don't particularly like the setup there. So you are into quite a complex situation, and there are many sort of discernment aspects of it which we will have to deal comprehensively. But that I'm sure the National Security Council Secretariat can look after.
Do you think, Major General Meston, that you know, the problems with Pashtun or Tajik or Hazara and all these other communities are a big factor at the end, because, you know, even at the Human Rights Council, they were saying that if you need stability in Afghanistan, you need to have all these parties included for stable peace. And you know, I mean, the Taliban is basically a Pashtun force. So what do you think? I mean, will they be able to, do they have the ability to run the whole of Afghanistan?
Yeah, no, coming on to this important aspect, I think this, you know, ethnic differences are deep-rooted. You know, I was quite surprised when I had to interact with the Afghan, even senior officers. They would refer to as, he is a Hazara national.
Okay.
Mother, I used to tell them, why do you call him a nationality or national? You know, he is your own people. So this is very deep-rooted into the society, and even amongst the Pashtuns, now we are seeing the fallout. It is quite deep-rooted. This tribal thing is very, very deep-rooted. Not only that, even all along the Durand line on both sides, even Pashtuns are very, very much divided. For example, the Quetta Shura side Pashtun or the Kandahar side Pashtun, their Pashtun is, you know, Kha, okay. And the Jalalabad side they say Shaw. Okay. So, you know, sir, even dialect is a little different. So the ethnicity problem is something, and that is why I always feel that today Afghanistan, or even in before, requires a leader who can unite the people. The day they can unite the people ethnicity wise, I think this country will be so solid that Pakistan will not be able to do anything of the divisive tendencies. They are, okay. I would you know, highlight what Ambassador was highlighting over the Durand line. Yes. In fact, Durand line is one of the critical issues which they even the Taliban have not recognized it, and therefore they keep the Pashtuns on both sides divided, in-house fighting, using them as, you know, fodder elsewhere. Okay. So this is where international community and perhaps India and even the Afghan leaders, you know, they must attempt to unite the various ethnic people, right. Which is very, very going to be very, very good for the stability of Afghanistan in the future. Taliban and
true. Okay, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Taliban and ISI and Pakistan would never allow them to this thing. If you recollect, they had been targeting Hazaras. Since they're a Shiite minority. I remember when I just landed, they were celebrating the Ashura, and 72 people lost their lives in a suicide attack on a masjid. So this is basically attempt to even fuse the Shia Sunni. And I would that way say, to the credit of Afghan people, right. They have not had these ethnic rights or something, which is quite creditable. So leader who can unify is the... Okay. Yeah.
Indeed. Ambassador Parthasarathi, the fact that so many people are leaving, and they'll be leaving from communities which are other than the Pashtuns, I presume, if the Taliban has support within the Pashtun community, I mean, that's if there are tribal loyalties. So in that case, then would the Taliban would actually encourage people to leave so that they have greater control over the whole of Afghanistan?
That cannot be done in practical terms.
Okay.
And moreover, it will lead to an inflow into the neighbors.
Okay.
Don't forget, the Russians have treaty agreements with their former republics like the Tajikistan and Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. So, you know, the Russians are really, for people, very concerned because they have a commitment to keep these republics going. And likewise, if they play with the fool with Hazaras, I think Iran has already let it be known that there will be a massive reaction. So I think best thing is to keep the pressure on them and let whatever emerge from the people themselves.
Okay.
And particularly from the Pashtuns. I mean, that will be the it takes time, yes, but in politics everything takes time. And therefore, I think that's a bit of patience we'll have to learn to live with. Okay. Don't forget, it took a few years of armed struggle for the Taliban to come in. The Americans knocked them out in a couple of days.
Okay.
But they were there. They were always there.
Okay, we leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Parthasarathi and Major General
Nice to meet you. Yeah, thanks.
Moving on then to our next story. Let's listen to a prominent Afghan women's rights activist who thanked Germany for saving her life. Her statement makes it easier for all of us to comprehend the situation on the ground.
I'm really thankful of German government and all people to save my life and my family's life. Secondly, I know the crisis of refugees and immigration within in Germany, but we are, like me and my family, we are not here as migrants. We are just here to raise the voice of those 99% of people in Afghanistan who are not able to come out of their houses, those women who are not able to work, those women who are not able to speak out. For next days, I want to make it like meet everyone, to go all around and to speak on behalf of all those unspoken women of Afghanistan.
Now, leaders of the G7 advanced economies are expected to pledge unity on whether or not to officially recognize or sanction the Taliban when they meet virtually to discuss Afghanistan today. At their meeting, the leaders of the G7 group of the richest countries, this includes the United States, Italy, France, Germany, Japan and Canada, they will focus on the evacuation effort and also on the long-term future of Afghanistan. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be chairing this conference. Earlier, on the 22nd of August, the British Prime Minister had tweeted, and I quote, "I will convene the G7 leaders on Tuesday for urgent talks on the situation in Afghanistan. It is vital that the international community works together to ensure safe evacuations, prevent a humanitarian crisis, and support the Afghan people to secure the gains of the last 20 years. Leaders from the intergovernmental G7 group, including Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, will meet to discuss the situation in Afghanistan, with the United Kingdom pushing for new economic sanctions on the Taliban." The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is also expected to urge the United States to delay its withdrawal from Afghanistan beyond August 31 deadline. Western countries are struggling to bring home their own citizens, and the desperate Afghans who are massing the Kabul airport, who are seeking to flee the country, fearing reprisals after the Taliban seized control just over a week ago. The UK has been active in the G7 group that it's heading this year on the Afghan situation. The UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab chaired a meeting with his G7 counterparts to discuss the joint action on the situation in Afghanistan on the 19th of August. Chairing that meeting, he gave a statement on the deteriorating situation in Afghanistan. And this is Dominic Raab's statement. As we can see, they concurred that the Taliban must ensure that Afghanistan does not become host to a terrorist threat. The G7 ministers called on the international community to come together with a shared mission to prevent the crisis in Afghanistan from escalating. Now, the Taliban has opposed any move to impose sanctions. It is said that the push by the G7 leaders to place sanctions on Afghanistan is biased and hostile against the Afghan people, who need financial support for the future and the reconstruction efforts that are to take place.
I think if they push forward for sanction, will be a biased decision. Will be against the people of Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan fought for 20 years against occupation. It was a popular uprising. You saw province after province was falling to us. In district after district, they were falling, all of them, to us, and in a peaceful manner. So it was a popular uprising. So what they are going to impose sanction against Afghanistan is against the people of Afghanistan. Why we need a reconstruction of the country?
Well, the Taliban has already started to seek financial support as well as cooperation from nations, even as consistent reports of human rights violations and abuses keep surfacing from Afghanistan.
we enter the new phase, a phase of peace, of peaceful coexistence, national unity of the Afghan people. So there is need for a lot for cooperation, financial support in this critical time. While the people of Afghanistan need financial support of other countries, they are talking or speaking of sanctions. So I think it is kind of hostility with the people of Afghanistan.
Well, the U.S. has a serious problem at hand. The evacuation efforts will more likely be extended beyond the deadline of August 31, and the Taliban has warned of consequences if that is done. Let's look at this report.
The United States and the Taliban seem to be headed for yet another confrontation. It seems likely that the evacuation process from the Kabul International Airport will extend beyond the deadline of 31st August. Although the Biden administration believes it has time till 31st August to get out any American who wants to get out, the intelligence gathering seems to be thinking otherwise. US House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff, speaking to reporters after a briefing by intelligence officials, has raised doubts on the deadline adherence. He thinks it is very unlikely that the evacuation will be completed by an August 31st deadline.
I think it's possible, but I think it's very unlikely. Given the number of Americans who still need to be evacuated, the number of SIVs, the number of others who are members of the Afghan press, civil society leaders, women leaders, it's hard for me to imagine all of that can be accomplished between now and the end of the month. Nonetheless, given the logistical difficulties of moving people to the airport and the limited number of workarounds, it's hard for me to see that being fully complete by the end of the month. And I'm certainly of the view that we maintain a military presence as long as it's necessary to get all U.S. persons out and to meet our moral and ethical obligation to our Afghan partners.
With thousands of desperate Afghans and foreigners massed at Kabul's airport in the hope of fleeing Afghanistan's new Taliban rulers, US President is expected to decide soon on whether to extend the deadline to airlift Americans and their allies to safety. Biden has already warned that the evacuation was going to be hard and painful, and much could still go wrong. US troops might stay beyond 31st to oversee the evacuation. Beyond the need to remove thousands of Americans, citizens of allied countries and Afghans who worked with the US forces, Department of Defense officials have also said that it would still take days to fly out 6,000 odd troops deployed to secure and run the airlift. The extension scenario has not gone down well with the Taliban. A Taliban official said that extension would not be granted if the US asked for it. Washington has maintained that the negotiations were continuing. Taliban has said that any delay would be a clear violation of the agreement.
They had agreed to withdraw all their forces by May 1st, but they violated that deadline. Now they have announced that they withdraw all their forces by August 31st. They should abide by their announcement. If they violate, so that would be a clear violation. In that case, it is up to our leadership to decide how to proceed and what to do.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the United States was in daily talks with the Taliban and making enormous progress in evacuating Americans and others. US defense officials maintain that almost everything would have to go perfectly to evacuate every American citizen by August 31st, given concerns about reaching the airport, terrorist attacks and complicated processing times. Panicked Afghans and foreigners have thronged the airport since, clamoring to catch any flight out. Many fear reprisals and a return to a harsh version of Islamic law the Taliban enforced while in power from 1996 to 2001. 20 people have been killed, most in shootings and stampedes, as international forces have tried to bring order at the international airport. The airport chaos has also disrupted aid shipments, with the World Health Organization saying that tons of medical supplies were stuck because Kabul airport was closed to commercial flights. The struggle for a normal life for thousands of Afghan citizens goes on. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, the U.S. is not in a hurry to apportion blame to any person or group for any miscalculation in what's being seen as Afghanistan's debacle. Here's what they think. As of now, it seems that no one erred in judgment, and understanding the capabilities of the Afghan forces to hold out and the leadership to inspire against the rampaging Taliban in the United States. No heads will roll in the capital over the Afghan debacle. U.S. President Joe Biden's national security advisor on Monday said he had not heard the president discuss any plans to fire, reassign, or to ask for the resignation of any White House or U.S. officials over the situation in Afghanistan.
President intend to fire, reassign, or ask for the resignation of any White House personnel or administration officials who've handled the situation in Afghanistan?
I have not heard him say so. It's, of course, your job to ask those kinds of questions. It's my job just to keep doing what we're doing, which is every day try to get as many people out as possible.
Biden has repeatedly defended his decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Afghanistan and said he took responsibility for making the decision to end the 20-year war. Biden and his officials have said that the Taliban's march into Kabul unfolded more quickly than anticipated, raising questions about a possible intelligence failure.
Why, if you knew that there would be chaos, did the administration not prepare the American public for the chaos?
So first, I'm glad you asked this question, and I want to take a step back and address the nature of an evacuation in a circumstance like this, and then I'll come to your specific point on messaging. Whether Kabul fell in August or September or December or next August, the fact is, whenever it fell, there were going to be American citizens in Kabul who needed to be evacuated. There were going to be third country nationals in Kabul who were going to be evacuated, have to be evacuated. There were going to be Afghans still in the fight who had supported the U.S. war effort over the last 20 years who were going to have to be evacuated. So an evacuation operation in a dangerous situation was going to happen at some point.
Biden's fellow Democrats who control Congress have promised to investigate what went wrong in Afghanistan within the past weeks and throughout the 20-year conflict, America's longest war.
There were any number of warnings that the Taliban might take over, and some that included the potential of a very rapid takeover. At the same time, though, I think it's also fair to say that no one predicted such a rapid collapse, a rapid and complete collapse of the Afghan government and forces.
For its part, the powerful U.S. military has been grappling with the collapse of U.S.-backed Afghan forces after 20 years of training. But it seems that the Biden administration does not think that anyone has taken the wrong call. There is no one to take the blame for the total chaos at the airport and in Kabul. World Today Desk, DD India. Five Afghans who were evacuated from Kabul to France were placed under surveillance due to suspected links to the Taliban, and one of them is in custody for failing to comply with a stay-at-home order. The French government spokesperson said on Tuesday Western countries are working to evacuate their citizens and others by the August 31 deadline, a date previously agreed with the Taliban for the withdrawal of foreign forces from Afghanistan. Some countries have asked for more time. The Afghan national helped in evacuating French citizens and people who worked for France during the evacuation of the French embassy during extremely tense moments. According to the French government, he might have had a tie-up with the Taliban at some point, which still needs to be verified. The investigations are still ongoing. The British government said on Monday an individual on the no-fly list had been flown from Afghanistan to Britain on a British military plane as part of the evacuation efforts, but said that that person was no longer considered a risk. Well, this has been a harsh year as far as adverse climate events are concerned. More on the floods, cyclones and lightning bolts. Here's our report.
Protests against climate change and a dire need to address the problem of environmental degradation is picking pace in many Western nations. Climate activists in London blocked traffic near Leicester Square on Monday by chaining themselves to a car and a giant pink table erected in the middle of the street. The activists are from the Extinction Rebellion group. They want an emergency response from governments and a mass move away from polluting industries to avoid the worst scenarios of devastation outlined by scientists. London's police warned on Friday that protests by environmental activists planned for the next 2 weeks will cause disruption across the capital and will distract officers from dealing with crime. And exactly why the call for some action is gaining traction can be judged from the fact that more and more areas in many developed nations as well are facing the vagaries of nature and its wrath. A lightning bolt striking One World Trade Center as tropical storm Henry approached New York City. Henry weakened ultimately to a tropical depression on Sunday night, but dumped heavy rains across the US Northeast through Monday night, triggering flash floods and power outages across the region. Record rainfall of up to 17 inches drenched some areas, sparking massive flooding even as hundreds of homes were left uninhabitable. Rescue teams with trained search dogs combed through destroyed homes and piles of debris on Monday for dozens of people believed to be missing in Tennessee after record downpours and flash flood left at least 21 dead over the weekend. Video from the area showed homes caved in and cars wrecked by the floodwaters. 5 or 6 teams of rescuers were searching through the destruction using sniffer dogs trained to find people. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee, a Republican, has said that he would request emergency assistance from the federal government in the next few days after an initial assessment. While one part of the United States is struggling with floods, other end is in fact in desperate need of some rain relief from the skies. California firefighters continue to struggle to contain the Calder fire, which has burned more than 1 lakh acres and destroyed more than 600 structures. The firefighters are now lighting backfires to deprive the Calder fire of fuel as it eats up acreage for a 9th consecutive day. The wildfire, which ignited on 14th August, had burned at least 1,14,166 acres and was 9% contained as on Monday evening. More than 24,000 people have been evacuated in El Dorado County itself. California's drought desiccated timber, brush and grasslands have created a potent fuel bed for several wildfires raging across the state. California, which typically has experienced its peak fire season in late summer and fall, is already on pace to see more of its landscape go up in flames this year than last, the worst year on the record. In Brazil, the firefighters are struggling to control a blaze at Jacareí State Park in the state of São Paulo. Dry weather and high temperatures have helped the fire spread, as firefighters have received more than 2,000 calls for fire in the area over the weekend. Firefighters have explained that it is difficult to put out flames as tanker trucks are unable to access some areas. A military police helicopter has been employed to battle the blazes. World over, wildfires have posed major threats to the ecosystem and also human settlements as more and more areas come under human habitation and increase man's conflict with the delicate balance of nature. World Today Desk, DD India.
And that's the World Today. Thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.